to the podcast Every Moment is Sacred, where we interweave meditation and healing into everyday life. I am your host, Rain Elizabeth Stickney. Now, let us begin. Hey, welcome back. I'm so happy you're here. And this is the end of season 2 for the podcast Every Moment is Sacred. We are taking our time with the ending. So each episode between now and the end of the year will have a little recap of what has happened in season 2. And tonight I am announcing the top 5 episodes. I am replaying the top episode. I have just re-edited it, and it was so fun to revisit the conversation and clean it up even more. If you have heard this episode before, you can listen to it again and you might gain something new from it. Okay, here we go. The top 5 episodes of Every Moment is Sacred in season 2 are number 5, episode 111, Awareness for Conscious Change. That is a meditation journey. Number 4, episode 72, Come Back to Love with Martha Alter Hines. That is a healing conversation. Number 3, episode 110, Peace Belongs Everywhere. That is a meditation journey. Number 2, episode 87, Alignment and Abundance with Athena Thiel. That is a healing conversation. And the number 1 top episode of Every Moment is Sacred in season 2 is episode 108, Embracing and Nurturing Highly Sensitive People with Lydia Gillman. That is a healing conversation. And that is the episode I'm sharing with you today, re-edited and refreshed, all ready for you. If you've heard Lydia on this show in the past, listen again. Her message is strong and clear and so vulnerable and loving about highly sensitive people having a superpower. And why not celebrate that? And how can we care for ourselves and each other in a highly sensitive and loving way? In season 2, I produced 40 episodes so far. That includes this one. And in the coming episodes, Monday's meditation, Tuesday's healing conversations, I will be sharing with you some more stats and celebrations and gratitudes. For today, I am so grateful to Lydia Gillman for being a guest, to Athena Thiel for being a guest, for Martha Alter Hines for being a guest. And actually, all 3 of them, I have done an Instagram Live with them. You can go to my feed at the very least, possibly theirs if they decided to post those reels as well. My handle on Instagram is at pictures of presence, at pictures _of presence, at pictures of presence. So you can find all of those reels as well as small clips. When I do an Instagram Live with someone, I really like to make short clips so that somebody can get just the gist of the conversation if they don't want to listen to the whole thing, or if they were there live and they just want to recap on something that was fun and interesting or important. So again, that's Lydia Gillman, Athena Thiel, and Martha Alterhines. Thank you so much for your presence and for your generosity in being on this show. If you would like to meditate online with me, I have a free meditation coming up on Thursday, November 21st, 2024. The sign up for that is in the show notes and it's free. Please come. It lasts an hour. It's always a great time. And if you would like to meditate with me in person, I have a winter retreat coming up. I would love for you to be there. It is a day-long retreat in January, Saturday, January 25th. It will likely be snowy here in Vermont. So those who live here, it's relatively easy to get to. It will be in Charlotte, Vermont. That's the town where I live. And if you don't live in Vermont, there are many fun places to stay, and I welcome you to travel here. Vermont is a wonderful place in the winter. Send me a note. You may email me meditation@rainelizabeth.org, and I will send you all the details. You can also DM me on social media. Instagram is where I am most at Pictures of Presence. You can search for my name on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram, Rain Elizabeth Stickney. It is a great joy, honor, and celebration to share with you this conversation with Lydia Gillman as we discuss highly sensitive people, which I am and she is. And funny enough, Lydia and I are the same age. So that comes up in our conversation too. Thank you again for being here. I feel grateful for you and for your presence. Namaste. It is so wonderful to be here with you. I am introducing Lydia Gillman, who is a mother, a highly sensitive person, and the creator of Love to a T. Love to a T is a store that shares messages of love and inspiration with the intention of spreading the ripples of love to a world desperately in need of it. Check out her store. Seriously, I have a wonderful shirt of hers that says radiate love. When I wear that shirt, I feel overjoyed because all I want to do is radiate love. Lydia is passionate about helping people realize their full potential and getting out of their way to do the amazing work they're put on earth to do. She also has a podcast, which I love, called Stepping into Purpose. And on her show, she shares stories about people doing exactly that. And I can attest to the guests that she gathers together. These people are so well spoken. They share so much meaning and value about the work they're doing and the perspective they hold about humanity. Listen in to Stepping into Purpose. Today on Every Moment is Sacred, you get to hear Lydia and me in conversation about highly sensitive people. I am a highly sensitive person, as is Lydia, and her two children are highly sensitive. Lydia especially focuses on helping parents of highly sensitive children to understand and embrace the unique challenges and joys of raising highly sensitive people. She loves to build connection through love and understanding. Okay, Lydia is all about love. And a funny thing about Lydia that you'll find right off in our conversation is that she worked on the set in a couple of different ways. She worked on Xena Warrior Princess. Okay, she was the stand-in double for Xena's sidekick, Gabrielle. I just love imagining Lydia on a set of film, and she just has a world of expertise in the industry. And I am forever inspired by Lydia. It's so fun to get to know people and have these surprises about who they have been and how who they have been informs who they are today. You get some of that in this conversation with Lydia and me. Connecting Xena Warrior Princess and Lydia and me and highly sensitive people all over the globe. High sensitivity is a superpower. This is something that Lydia and I highlight together. I fully believe it. If you are a highly sensitive person, embrace your sensitivity as a superpower it is. If you need some support for your high sensitivity, reach out to Lydia. Her contact information is in the show notes. You can also search for her store, Love to a T. You can look for her on social media, Love to a T, or search for her name, Lydia Gillman with 2 L's. I am happy to be here with you today. And without further ado, here is my beloved friend, beautiful soul, graceful person of this world, Lydia Gillman. Hey, Lydia.
Hi, Rain. How exciting to be here with you.
Oh, likewise. I am so excited to sit in presence with you and to learn more about highly sensitive people and just bask in your glow. I really love connecting with you.
It's completely mutual. And yeah, I couldn't think of anyone I'd rather sit with right now. So, yay.
You have a podcast called Stepping into Purpose.
Yes, yes.
Tell us about that and how it's going.
It's been my big sort of project of the year. And it's quite interesting. I never really had any intention of having a podcast. And then I sort of got swept up by Kathy Heller, who is a mentor of us both, really, isn't she? And
Mhm.
she's got a beautiful podcast and she's so convincing. And I need a podcast. And, it wasn't so much for the external point of it, but I think a big part of it has been for me to really find my own voice. I'm someone who has never really liked the sound of my own voice. So that's a bizarre thing from the start. It's like, podcasting, you've got nothing else to hang on to. So it's been a big growing journey for me in that way, but also just finding my voice and expressing myself. And with other amazing people has been the best way, connecting with other. You've been on the podcast and just other people like you. And it's the most delicious thing for me is to connect with other like-minded women. Actually, they've all been women, and that hasn't really entirely been conscious, but it's the way it's worked out. And it's been, such a beautiful journey. I'm nearly at the first, year one on January the 11th. So
Coming up.
Coming up. It's been a great ride. Yeah.
And so we're recording this in December, and our episode, Lydia, will probably air sometime in January. So it might be right around your anniversary, your podcasting birthday.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I've seen other people who started this journey with me celebrating that. And it really is a big achievement because it's a lot of work, and not just physical work, but also you're really putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable. And I think it's beautiful. It's been an amazing journey.
You have such a lovely show. And I understand that you're not only on the podcasting platforms, but also on YouTube.
Yes, I decided to put it on YouTube as well because I'm quite a visual person and I really like to see who's talking, so I decided to put it out there as well, just as another thing as well. But I like just listening to podcasts. I like doing both, and I like putting a podcast in while I'm doing all my busy household work, doing the dishes and cooking the dinner and that sort of thing. So I like to have the option. But my background is more with film and video. I worked in the film industry for many years, front and behind the camera, actually. So I'm quite comfortable and familiar with that side of things. So actually, doing the podcast was more, not risky, but more of a stretch for me, I think, only
Mhm.
having the voice.
Wow. So this is so interesting. I actually didn't know that you were in film before. And
Yeah.
so one of the things we're going to talk about, actually, the main thing is about being a highly sensitive person and your experience and expertise in that area. So let's combine those and imagine in the film industry, how was being a highly sensitive person a value? What was your superpower there?
Well, I know that it had its challenges, especially when I worked behind the camera. I worked on a program called Xena Warrior Princess. Have you heard of that? It's an
I
American
have.
show.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And Hercules. And I'm from New Zealand, and they were actually filmed right down in New Zealand completely, like two full-time productions. Hercules and Xena were on at the same time. So I sort of was on both, but mainly Xena. And I was the stand-in and body double for Gabrielle, who was like Xena's sidekick, because I'm quite petite and I'm like not 6 foot like Lucy Lawless, who plays Xena. But yeah, her sidekick called Gabrielle. And yeah, that was in my early 20s. And it was a lovely job to have, actually. I learned so much about the technical side, which as an aspiring actor, it was really, really helpful. But working those, it was a standard week was 60 hours, but
Wow.
I'd often do overtime, because I'd get there before the actor. Because this is funny, I'd actually drive her trailer like a camper van.
Uh-huh.
The stand-ins and body doubles were like responsible for driving, because everywhere she was going to be, I was going to be. So I'd
Okay.
drive that to and from the set each day and park it up, and then she'd come in and get dressed and have makeup and stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. So I'd often have to be there at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and then leave sort of 8 at night. So it was full on. I mean, it was really just, I did that for 3 years, and it was really just, be at work, eat and sleep, and laundry on the weekends. You really didn't want any socializing. And for myself anyway, and I think that probably is because of the highly sensitive element, on
Mhm.
weekends, I didn't really want to see anyone aside from my family. I was still living at home actually with my parents at that stage. I was about 21, I think. And yeah, you'd almost get, I remember discussing this with one of my colleagues, that you'd actually get sort of a bit angry if someone showed up unexpectedly, like on a Sunday afternoon or something. You're like, oh, I've got so much to do, and I don't want to see anyone right now. So it
Mhm.
shows how out of balance it kind of is. But it's
Mm.
really that thing, yeah, where you really need time to yourself. And if you're doing long hours like that, as an introvert and highly sensitive, I'm kind of an extroverted introvert, actually. I'm not a full introvert, but yeah, I
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
need my time to myself to recharge.
Mhm.
So yeah, I didn't know that I was a highly sensitive person back then, but yeah, it all makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. What is a highly sensitive person?
Well, I mean, quite a new discovery to me. It made so much sense once I realized that that's what it was, but that's what I was. And all my family are as well. My dad is, my husband, and both of
Oh,
our
wow.
kids are highly sensitive. And it's a personality trait. I mean, it's not a diagnosis. So you can't be diagnosed. It's slightly different from autism or something like that. But some of the factors are sort of the same, similar. But yeah, I think we're actually wired differently, and we have more neuroreceptors and transmitters than the average person.
Mhm. Mhm.
We're just wired to feel more. I think we're more sensitive to external stimuli. We're more sensitive to other people's emotions and our own emotions. Feel really deep empathy.
Mm.
It's painful sometimes. I know you're a highly sensitive person as well.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it can be quite painful if you sort of let yourself go there too much, because there's a lot of joy in the world, but there's also a lot of suffering. And I think
Mhm.
it can be very painful. And sometimes you just sort of have to protect yourself from that pain
Mhm.
if there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
you're right. I'm right here in it with you, being a highly sensitive person. And I love hearing your definition because I want our listeners to know what a highly sensitive person is and give some context. But also, we all might define this personality trait a little differently. And where there are some mainstays, like we do tend to feel more than other people, and we have more input coming in that's available to us. And so on a bad day, it can be very overwhelming and difficult. And on a good day, we get extra information. It isn't that the information isn't available to other people. It's just that it is more readily available to those who are sensitive to it.
And you often don't have a choice. It just comes to, and you'll get feelings. I mean, it's hugely beneficial. And I think it sort of goes back to, because even animals are highly sensitive as well. And it's kind of like those, if you think of a herd of, let's say, deer or something like that, and the ones on the outside who'll be protecting the herd or whatever, and sort of just be more sensitive to what's going on, any danger, and they pick up those vibes, I guess, almost from others. But I mean, it shows up in lots of different ways. And it's funny because it's hard in some ways for me to be objective about it, because it's how I am. And like I say, all of my immediate family members that way. So it sort of just seems normal, but then I realize it isn't. But there's perfectionism shows up quite a lot. Yeah, a need for solitude, to have time to yourself to unwind. Yeah, deep empathy, and picking up other people's feelings. And that can be a real challenge as a child as well, because you don't always know that that's not yours. Those energies aren't yours. I think having education around that's really, really helpful. Yeah, I think having the knowledge out there is so helpful, because I just sort of felt the term wasn't invented when I grew up, and it was the 90s when I was in my 20s, really. I think mid-90s when it was coined by Elaine Aron, and she herself was a highly sensitive person, and she thought there was something wrong with her until she was a psychologist anyway, and she discovered, no, this is a thing. It does affect up to 30% of people, 20 to 30%. It's seeming to increase in some ways. Like recent studies have shown that more people are highly sensitive. I think that understanding makes such a difference. When I was a child, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't really understand why I was feeling so deeply. I just thought I was a bit of a strange child. I'm sure probably my parents did as well. I think it's very validating to understand, and to teach my children about it as well.
Well, we're the same age, Lydia, and I imagine that if we met each other as children, we probably would have been friends.
I think we would have, oh, someone else like me. Yay.
Yeah.
But I guess with the geographical containers, you're just surrounded by those people, all sorts, and that's what I love about these days, that we have these online communities where we can meet and connect with other like-minded people. It's beautiful. And that never existed. And our kids have that now too, as long as it's, safely entered into safely. But I think it really makes a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad we get to connect now. And one of the online communities that we're both involved in is Instagram. And so when I think of my listeners, the people who listen to this show, it's the people who listen to the show, but also the people that I connect with on Instagram or other social media platforms about the show. So something that I'm aware of in my community is that there's a deep interest in highly sensitive people, including people who, similar to you, have either parents or children or both who are highly sensitive. But the person in the middle may or may not be highly sensitive. Yeah. I wonder if you can speak a little bit about what is it like to be the daughter of a highly sensitive father, and also to have highly sensitive children. Yeah,
I think that's a great question. It's only really been this year that I've realized that my father is indeed highly sensitive. And because I've been talking about it quite a lot, and he'll sort of be like, yeah, I think that's me. And then now I put the pieces together, I look back, go, oh, he's totally like that, because I'm a lot like him. It explains a lot. I think it's difficult for parents who are highly sensitive, aside from whether or not their children are, as parents who are highly sensitive people, it's difficult. I see my husband struggle with that and myself struggle with that at times, because you really don't get that solitude which you need on a regular basis, because you have these little people who are, and even when they're bigger people coming in and out and just needing things all the time. I mean, it really is important to just put your needs out there as well and really carve out time as much as you can. I know my husband's finding it a bit difficult at the moment because we've moved to a new city where we don't have any family support, really, whereas the last two cities we were in, we had grandparents. Our children had grandparents there. Yeah, it's a little bit hard. Like, the kids are around all the time, except for school pretty much, or time with their friends, but we don't really have that time just to ourselves. So it can be challenging. You know, often when Elaine Aron, who's written an amazing book, which I so recommend everyone checks out. Yeah, it's called The Highly Sensitive Person, and that was her original book. And it's just so enlightening. If you realize that you are a highly sensitive person, it's just brilliant. I've read it a few times, and she's got other ones as well. One's called The Highly Sensitive Parent, which is like what I'm talking about if you are a parent who's highly sensitive. I mean, it's a really big thing. Yeah, just about getting that time to yourself. You know, we get, as highly sensitive people, we get overstimulated or over aroused, she calls it, when there's just too much stimuli coming in, and you get very irritable when that happens. We sort of get irritated and angry, and so I see that quite a lot in our household, where we'll sort of all go, it seems like it's the opposite of being a highly sensitive person. We all sort of get irritated and shout, but it's really a big part of it, and especially if there's 4 of you in a household.
Oh my gosh.
It can be quite interesting. Sometimes I think transitions can be quite hard as well for highly sensitive people, and to get the 4 of us out of the house, it's really, really something, especially on a time schedule. So yeah, that's often a fraught environment as well.
You and I had a super fun Instagram live not too long ago. All of you wonderful listeners can find that on either one of our feeds on Instagram. Lydia, one of the things that you were describing in that conversation was the moments when you sometimes choose to sit with your daughter before school, if maybe she doesn't want to get out of the car, or she's having some feelings about whatever she's having feelings about. And that was so meaningful to me and to other people to hear about your experience. And just on Friday, I was sitting with my son, a little highly sensitive 9-year-old. He did not want to go to school, and he was having a lot of anxiety in a way that, where I know he's sensitive, it hadn't really happened like this before. And I felt you and I just felt this similarity. I was thinking, oh, this is what Lydia's talking about. So he and I actually decided not to go to school that day. But if there are parents listening who have a highly sensitive child, what are some things that work for you to be with your daughter? She's older than my son, but to be with a child in a really good and caring way and also get to school.
Well, you let me, if anyone has the answer, let me know.
Okay.
Because quite often we didn't get to school as well. I mean, it would sometimes work, but often, sometimes it's just, what I found really quite enlightening about it is letting go of the fruit of your actions, I suppose. It was really, you know, I'd do my best, and sometimes she'd go into school and sometimes she wouldn't. You know, the first couple of times when she's like, oh, I just have to go home, and I sort of went, oh, okay. So I turned around and drove home, and I started sort of crying because it's just exhausting, because even to get her dressed and out the door and all that, so it's quite a lot. It was quite a lot just for everyone in the household to get ready and make lunches and do all those things, out the door on time, drive across town. Her school wasn't that close. It's a good sort of 20 minutes to drive there, and would get there and, oh, are we on time? Quick, go now and you'll make the bell. And then it's like, no. And then the time goes, oh, maybe you can go now, be the next period. No. And it's just about letting go of that. And the important parts was that I'd really pour into her all my learnings and wisdom which I've picked up over the years
Mm-hmm.
from different teachers and things I've read. I'll just sort of pour into her and sort of try and inspire her,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they were really deep conversations as well. And I think she really appreciated that. I just had to let go of the thing of whether or not she gets to school because, she's had these important lessons. I've been able to give her these important
Mm-hmm.
sort of, not teachings, but you know what I mean? Like these
They
learnings,
they
which I
might be
understand.
teachings.
Well, they're things which have definitely helped me and things I'd learned over my lifetime and
Mm-hmm.
what I realize is not important and what is important. And,
Mm-hmm.
I look back on that. It was really just probably the last half of the year where it sort of went like this. And she was 12. It doesn't really matter how well she did at school. And amazingly, I mean, she's really bright, and amazingly, she did do pretty well in her grades anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter. But yeah, it's hard on us, I think. It is hard on us as parents because we're wondering,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do? Because almost like for me anyway, it's like doing the right thing, okay, you need to go to school. This is,
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
achieved my intention. You are there, you're at school. And no, that didn't happen. They have strong wills. I mean, my children have very strong wills, and especially her. I can't make her do anything which she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want to do,
Mm-hmm.
even when she was younger, but especially now. She's bigger than I am now.
Oh.
Like really, she's really bigger and stronger than I am now. It's about letting go and renouncing the fruit of your action. That's really what it came down to for
Mm-hmm.
me, and to do your best, but at the end of the day, to
Mm-hmm.
just surrender it. And her path is her path. She's got a strong vision for her life, and I can support her as much as I can, but
Mm-hmm.
it might not necessarily be in the way that I think it has to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such an important lesson that our children's lives don't need to be the way that we think they need to be. A child has a whole life that is their own, and the parent is responsible in some ways, but the life is the child's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's become really clear. She has a very strong vision for her life, and she's hugely ambitious, a lot more ambitious than I ever was. And she will succeed. I know she'll succeed in whatever she does, and she's so determined. So really it's just about finding the right way to support her and to offer her all that I have. I mean, I feel grateful that I'm at this point in my life and I know where to find these amazing teachers. I've done lots of really incredible courses over the years, and she's interested in all this sort of thing. I can give those to her, and I'll often just say, here, listen to this, and put headphones on her, and she's taking it in. She doesn't miss a beat. If you say her name on the other side of a room or the other side of a house and be like, what did you say about me? She's very astute and doesn't miss a beat. So I love that I can just sort of pick out these things which I found beneficial and that I know will be beneficial for her, and just plug it in and she'll drink it in. Being the same age, I mean, there wasn't access to the gold. I mean, there probably was, but it wasn't as accessible, the gold and the inspiring messages and things, which are so available everywhere to us now. You might have had to go into a bookshop or a secondhand bookshop or something and dig deep and try and find a little passage or something. Now that I can just put some headphones on my daughter and say, listen to this, tell me what you think, and she'll drink it, is really, really empowering, actually.
It's so brilliant that you share these important, they are lessons, but that's also, there is some truth embedded into some of these lessons, like the kind of truth that is not dependent on the detail. And I believe, just from hearing about your daughter, I believe she can hear some of that truth that's not dependent on the detail.
Yeah. Yes. And underneath it all, she feels loved and validated and accepted no matter what. I mean, I think that's been a really underlying message of it as well, that I'll sort of be frustrated or disappointed, or not disappointed, but it's that that thing where we're wanting her to go, she's not doing what we intended for them to do, but she's loved all the same, and that I feel what she's going through, and that I was the same. I think it's a big thing that I went through a lot of the same thing. I didn't enjoy school that much either, and I did find it hard, but there was sort of, maybe I just wasn't as strong to not go. I mean, it wasn't really an option for me. I think we just went, and it's just different.
So, your father being a highly sensitive person, was he able to pick up on your sensitivity when you were growing up? Was there any sort of a resonance, or even though it wasn't defined in those terms in those years, but being a highly sensitive person, I know that it refers to something that is just innate to me. And so I'm just wondering if there was a known sensitivity between you and your father.
I guess we were always like similar, and my mother always said, yes, you're just like your father. You're so similar. But I mean, I don't think he necessarily recognized it in himself,
Mm,
and he didn't. And probably he was more in survival mode, and in a
mm,
certain way in those earlier years when you have kids. Like I'm saying, you're working
mhm,
hard, you've got kids, you've got all these things going on. And it's a different time, I think, too. People weren't quite as emotionally hands-on
mm,
in recognizing these things as we are with our kids now.
mhm,
So I don't think it was acknowledged in me.
mhm,
But I'm sure my parents sort of noticed that I was sort
mhm,
of a bit different,
mhm,
perhaps. Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense now. And I think it's good for him now too, that I'm talking about it a lot, and he's becoming more self-aware. I mean, I don't
mm,
think he was so self-aware back in those days, 70s and 80s, and
mhm,
you're just going through life, surviving
mhm,
almost.
mhm.
And I think it's more been in later life for him that he's becoming more self-aware and acknowledging these things. Yeah.
How lucky he is to have you.
Yeah, well, always really, but I think that's right. I think he's starting to recognize, that there are gifts in these things, and maybe I can reflect that back to him
Mhm,
now. So
mhm.
yeah, he's really enjoying. He says he's never been happier in his life,
Oh,
than
that
he
is
is
so
now.
sweet.
Yeah, which is really nice. He's about 82, I think, but
Mm,
still really fit. Yeah, I think work can be hard for highly sensitive people. Being in a job, I see this with my husband, being in a job which doesn't necessarily work for you that well, but
mm,
they think that's what they need to do to survive and put food on the table and things. Is that pressure, I think. Sometimes the dad, the husband, or whatever, they get stuck in those traditional
mhm,
roles and get stuck in it. So I see that repeating sometimes with my husband as
mhm.
well. And it's interesting.
I'm giggling, Lydia, because just yeah, I shared some of this with you before I hit record, but just yesterday you had sent me the link to your new store, which I hope everybody goes to. Lydia has some wonderful things for sale. And I was telling my partner and my son about you and about your store and just how lovely you are and that you specialize in highly sensitive people. And this is a follow up from me being a guest on your show, Lydia. My partner said, "Oh, you mean like all of us?" And so he included himself in being highly sensitive, like our son and me, where when you and I spoke for your show a while back, I wasn't really sure if he would define himself in that way. But in that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, he knows. He gets that sensitivity that he also embodies. And I did not make a big deal about it, but inside I wanted to tell you.
I love that. And this is the work. It's from us going first, and recognizing
Mhm,
these things and laying it out there and being open about who we are and what we are
mhm,
and what we do in this world. I mean, it gives them permission, and they can see it in
mhm,
themselves as well. I think that goes
mhm,
for even people who we don't even know who are listening. It's just so important. So often people they might feel, oh, it's too vulnerable to share, or who really cares what I am anyway. But it's so
mhm,
important, because us sharing our truth helps other
mhm,
people identify that in themselves. And especially our
mhm,
close people, through you just being who you are, you're helping him become more self-aware and accepting of
mhm,
who he is as a superpower. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a beautiful, highly sensitive person like you? I mean, you just
Oh.
ooze love and light, and yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And you are overflowing with love and light too. Absolutely. And
Thank
this,
you.
you're welcome. And this self-awareness piece is really important because it isn't so much how we define ourselves. It's more about whether or not we're willing to really look at ourselves and learn and grow with who we are, whatever we want to call that. For the highly sensitive person, I know from my own experience, I was sometimes dismayed. I don't think I have shared this part with you before, but sometimes as a child, and if I did, forgive me for repeating myself. As a child, sometimes my friends would call me psychic, and I might be psychic as well. I'm not going to throw that out, but my experience was simply that I was paying attention. So I might know like which people in our school were related to which people, or who had siblings, or who had divorced parents, or what cars belonged with which families. Or it wasn't something that was anything I really thought about. It was just things that I noticed. So sometimes in conversation, I would mention something that somebody wouldn't know that I knew about them. And they'd say, "What? Are you psychic?" And I would, even as a child, I would kind of laugh to myself, like, no, I'm just paying attention.
Wow.
And so, whatever kinds of self awareness we have about ourselves, we can always use our self awareness as a superpower because we're all paying attention to something in some direction of life. To embody that and to allow that to inform our reality as a gift.
And I mean, we are wired differently as well. Like with those extra neurotransmitters and the neuroreceptors, it is a thing, you know, but I think it's also I was watching a video about octopus the other day. Someone had a pet octopus, and it was just fascinating to hear about them and how they have all, you know, every one of their arms are just like receiving information. It was
Mhm,
fascinating. It sort of reminds me of being highly sensitive. You're putting out all your feelers and you're
mhm,
taking in information that you don't even really know you're taking on. And
mhm,
sometimes it's not always beneficial, you know, but it's just you take the good with the bad, I guess. It can be really useful. You might feel things about people which are not so good, and it gives you that warning. I think historically that's probably why highly sensitive people kind of, like I was saying, with the
mhm,
in the animal world and things, as protectors, the protectors of the herd, and maybe they were
mhm,
more the protectors of the tribe as well.
mhm,
So yeah, I think
mhm,
it's a specific reason, but it's so important to see that in ourselves and
mhm,
see the superpower that it is.
mhm, mhm. Indeed.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about your daughter and yourself and your father and your husband, but what of your son? How does the sensitivity show up in him?
He's a Pisces, which is
Mm,
the fish sign. I remember when both kids were born, my mother got their charts read. She had someone who read their charts, and it was interesting. It sort of said how deep they are and quite emotional. It said even in it, you know, you don't want to yell at them too much, you know, just sort of they'll get it, you know. And so I always had that feeling of him being sensitive anyway, not even really thinking before I even really thought about the highly sensitive thing of myself or any of us. I always kind of treated him like that because he gets it. And I'd sort of probably be a little bit trying to control a little bit, like I'd sort of jump in when my husband would get really angry. Oh, and I'll say, no, he doesn't really need that, because then my son would just get beyond upset. It was like a real deep level where he'd just be devastated. I'm like, he doesn't need that, you know, just be gentler. He'll get it, you know.
mhm,
Yeah, so he definitely is highly sensitive as well. But yeah, he's someone who gets it, and you don't
mm,
have, he takes things very deeply. Yeah, it's lovely. I never had any brothers before. I didn't really have that much to do with boys. And, you know, when I was thinking when I was younger, I'd want to have daughters rather than sons, you know, because I didn't really know boys. But actually, I just love having that experience of being a mother to a boy. It's just, I don't know if it's just him, but it's a different relationship. I can see that also with my husband and my daughter. It's a slightly different relationship, and it's really special, you know. Both relationships are special. There's a real depth there between, you know, sons and their mums. You know, they really are connected on quite a deep level. So
So
yeah.
special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really special. And yeah, he's doing really well, actually. We've come to a new country this year, and he's been in 2 schools actually because we moved, and he was okay
Oh,
with moving, but he's done really well, and he's been really resilient, because that's not easy to move schools halfway through after only being there for 6 months and things. I'm really proud of how he's done, and a part of it was his choice as well. He was happy to do that, but yeah, he's done really well. So he's only 10, but I found when he was younger, he had a really hard time with transitioning and going to school. And he's had a bit of a bad run, to be honest, with teachers who weren't the kindest. I think that this year we've had 2 beautiful teachers, so it's
oh,
been
good.
amazing. But yeah, the last few years he had sort of more of the sort of strict, stroppy teachers who didn't really take into account who he was and who a lot of the children were. It's not really a thing this year, but he used to need to go to the toilet a lot, and the teacher wouldn't let him go to the toilet, or
Oh,
really,
no.
yeah, it was a real thing. This went on for most of last year, and it's funny because I'd sort of forgotten about it till right now, but it was like, well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? You know, to really, no, you have to wait till lunchtime or something. Oh, but I didn't know. I didn't need to go at recess, and I do need to go now, and I can't really hold, you know. So yeah, for a 9-year-old, I think that was hard. Yeah, and he just sort of year after year got these teachers who weren't the easiest. So yeah, I'm really glad he's had a run of 2 amazing teachers. And I think maybe, of course, I can't say this about all teachers, but we're in Australia now, and I think just the fact that they're probably better paid and treated a bit better, they're happier, they probably want to be there, and that makes a huge difference. Whereas in New Zealand, I know that the teachers have had a lot of struggles with fair pay and all this sort of thing. So sometimes they just get fed up with it. It's a lot of work. I mean, I have the hugest admiration for teachers. I couldn't do that, really, be with kids for all those 40, well, not quite 40 hours, but there's a lot of hours that you have that
Yes.
face-to-face contact with kids, you know. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, good points. It's so wonderful when teachers are valued and they're really where they want to be, and then they can teach. They can do their job well and happily, and the children benefit because the children get to learn from somebody who's being well taken care of.
Yeah, it's so important. I find it crazy that historically they're one of the lower paid professions because it's the most important. And you think back to your own teachers, and there are always some which stand out as really nurturing you and reaching your full potential, and others who really kind of have the opposite effect. So yeah, it's really important. I know when I was at school, in high school, I had quite low self-esteem and I wasn't that confident. And he really saw, my English teacher he really saw something in me. And I have always, I guess I'm quite naturally good at English and writing and that sort of thing, but I didn't really necessarily believe it. And he really saw something in me and nurtured me. I worked to that, and I got sort of the top A+ or whatever in the year when I was 15. So that was really beneficial, but I know that I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had that teacher, because he nurtured me. He didn't push me as such, but he made me believe in myself. So I achieved the results. Isn't that what we want all teachers to do, you know?
I also had a very good teacher. I mean, I guess a few of them, but the first one that came to mind was when I was in 3rd grade. I was still very little, 8, turning 9. And this teacher, she was able to find the exact place where I needed to learn and then push me right there. And perhaps she was highly sensitive too. I don't know, but she was a very good teacher because she was attuned and she was willing to be attuned. I was a very high achieving child, and the school was really struggling with me about what to do because I had done all of the grades, but I was still in third grade. But this teacher was able to find the place that I needed to grow. I needed to learn. I needed some support. And she just would nudge me. It was brilliant. It was so good. And it felt scary to be that child. Like, oh no, you can see what I don't know. Of course, I was so little still, but I had that experience like, oh, she can really see me. And she taught me. She really taught me.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that special? I mean, I think our teachers, and especially at those young formative years, they make the biggest impact. And the fact that you can remember this so clearly, and even the feelings, I mean, yeah, 40 years on is incredible, isn't it? I only know that because we're the same age.
I know. Right. It was 40 years ago. You're so right.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing for us to think that that's 40 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I have to say, I love getting older. I mean, maybe it's because we're still at that age where we're still young enough and things, and our body's not giving in or anything. But I love getting older, and I'm kind of excited for turning 50 next year. And it's right at the end of next year because I'm a December baby. But it's exciting because it's, wow, half a century. And we've sort of got this year to have as a bit of a goal, a deadline. Okay, I want to do this before I'm 50. It's nice to have those little pointer marks, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. And I've never felt better, to be honest. Like I said, my dad said that. I'm the same as well. As I get older, I think that is the case for a lot of highly sensitive people, is the more you grow and get older and also learn about yourself, the better you feel, and you realize that we're here in this world for a purpose. I mean, it's not by accident. I think that seems like there's more highly sensitive people in the world, because I think these skills and these gifts are needed now more than ever. Just if someone said to me that, I don't know where this came from, maybe it came from a meditation they had or something, but they felt like, within 20 years, pretty much all the children being born would be highly sensitive people. It was probably a prediction. I can't remember who told me that, but I can imagine that will be the case, that's what the world needs, just people more tuned in. And when I watch movies like Avatar, it's kind of a bit like that, isn't it? It's just everyone's more in tuned, and it feels like if we go the right way, that's what the future of humanity will be.
Yes. When you were talking about school earlier in regard to your daughter, and sometimes there have been moments where school just didn't happen. And for me with my son, it was a new parenting moment because my son is often very excited about school. He really loves school. He loves his friends. He loves his teachers. He loves what he's learning. And so it was a very new experience for me to decide what to do with the anxiety he was experiencing, although I don't know if that's the word he would use, but he was having a lot of feelings that looked like anxiety to me, and choosing not to send him to school. So what I'm getting at is that there might be a shift in value. I heard you beginning to talk about that around like, well, maybe it's not so much school that's important. There are these other ways of learning. And if we consider the highly sensitive person either being born more and more often, or more and more people identifying this way, what might be the shift in value that could happen if we really honor the sensitivity?
I think just the emotional side of us, the spiritual and emotional side of us, rather than just, getting out there and doing things in the world. I know there was a study actually in the highly sensitive person book. Elaine Aron talked about a study which was done, I think, in Canada, and they had a similar one done in China. In Canada, the children were asked, I think they're between, I can't really remember now, but, elementary school children were asked, who would you want to be your friends? So it was more the confident, sort of stronger, tougher sort of ones who came out on top, whereas in China, it was the more quiet, sensitive ones who people wanted to be friends with. So it's almost like in the East, a lot of the Eastern countries, these qualities are valued. And maybe it's because of that deep spiritual history as well. That sensitivity can be seen as sort of wisdom and tuning into something else, rather than the physical world. It's quite interesting. And I think growing up in these Western worlds, it wasn't valued as kids. It's like, come on, go, be tough, get
Hmm.
out there, sort of thing.
Hmm.
My son has a best friend, which was in New Zealand, and they're still very close. They just connect, online now, but he's always been very, very sensitive. And even for school photos and this sort of thing, he'd sort of cry and wouldn't want to be out there when he was younger anyway. And the teachers, I think these days they don't really shame kids for doing that. But probably in our day, it would have been much more like that. Kids get shamed for not being tough. Come on, toughen up. That was
Oh.
sort of the rhetoric, maybe in these sort of Australia, New Zealand sort of countries as well. It's
Mhm.
like, toughen up, come on, drink a cup of concrete. And especially boys. I think boys got it a lot. I think it's still that residue is still there. Just
Mhm.
toughen up and you can do it. Get over yourself, sort of thing. And I
Mhm.
know I grew up with a lot of that as well. But no, that's not necessarily the best thing.
Mhm. True.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. Yeah. I was told often to get a thick skin. I
yes.
was told to toughen up. I was very sensitive as a child. There was no stopping it, but I was told a lot of things.
Yeah. And I think it affects you as a child because you don't have any comparison and you think, oh, yeah, there's something wrong. I mean, like I say, you think there's something wrong with you because you are like
Mhm.
that. But it's a gift, and it's why it's so lovely that we can see who
Mhm.
we are and we can pass that on to our children as well. Because it is a beautiful gift, which is in other parts of the world, it's revered and it's
Mhm.
valued.
Mhm.
So it's just moving that narrative, shifting that narrative, I think. It's really about the internal. I think the value is really about the internal and connecting from the inside out with
Mhm.
the world rather than just the outside on a more
Absolutely.
physical level.
What are the kinds of things that are helpful for highly sensitive people at any age? What
Mm.
tips or tricks do you have?
Well, I think the biggest thing is understanding and validation. I think if we do have highly sensitive children, that's the most important thing. And to give them a little bit of space. Like I said before, transitions are really difficult. So just working with transitions and finding a way with your child that you can manage that. I've heard some people find walking to school better because it gives that sort of
Mhm.
transition time rather than jumping in the car and being there in 2 minutes and bam, they're at school. Just finding
Mhm.
little ways that'll work with your family. But yeah, I think understanding is key and just recognizing those triggers. If you're at a busy, chaotic environment and you're starting to get affected by it and irritated by it, I see this with my husband. He can't tolerate malls. It lasts like 20 minutes and he gets really irritated. So, we choose most of the time to not go with him. If he wants to get something, he'll just go in and out. And if the kids want to do some more shopping or something, I'll just go with them. And I don't have a huge capacity for them either, but it's just about recognizing those signs. And even if you can't avoid those places, just working with it. So when those triggers arise and you start to get really irritated, you just remove yourself from the situation. I know
Mhm.
my kids, a big fundraiser here in Australia and New Zealand for schools are having discos, and they'll have
Oh.
these discos at night and the kids will dress up and go to they've loud DJs and stuff. A lot of the time my kids couldn't bear it. Actually, they'd go to one or two and then they'd opt out because it's just too noisy and
Mhm.
chaotic, and it wasn't for them. And again, it's as a parent, it's not judging. Sometimes you think, oh, but you should really go probably because all your friends will be there and you're missing out on the social interaction. But yeah, it's not for them. It's not for them. And there's no point going to something which is loud and just going to be
Mhm.
irritable. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's as parents and also as looking after ourselves as highly sensitive people, it's getting rid of those shoulds, really. That's the biggest thing for me.
Mhm.
And a big part of something I've learned this year with my daughter as well, oh, but she should go to school. She's meant to go to school. And then it's like, look at her. She's so upset and she doesn't want to go. And she, why don't we just go home? She can spend the day with me and I can fill her in other ways. Isn't that more important, to validate her feelings rather than just pushing her out of the car? And I tried all different things. I mean, a couple of times I got frustrated and I yelled, and, I wasn't perfect by any means. And I was trying to figure out the best thing to do. I wasn't really sure, because we get caught up in those shoulds. And also it's about letting go of what's led you to that point. Like, but we've gone here, we've driven, and we got up early, and you've had your breakfast, you got your lunch in your bag, we've done all these things, and now we're here, and you're not, okay, we'll just drive home again. And we've beaten all the traffic to get here. Yeah. It's just letting go of that, going, okay, it's fine, it's fine. What's the point of anything anyway? I mean, we're living this life, isn't those feelings the most important thing of how she feels afterwards? Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing, Lydia. And I hear so much acceptance and honoring, and truly a shift in value, meaning that at the very least, culturally, there is a different value. What I hear you speaking of is, no, pay attention to the person. Pay attention to the person. What does the person need?
Yeah, it's so true. It's really about that. And it's always come back to that for me when you've gone to maybe certain people's houses and they're like, don't touch the walls, or telling your kids, don't touch the walls, don't do this. It's all about the environment. And I hated that. Like, I was always with my kids, it's like, it's fine, don't draw on the walls, but just feel relaxed and enjoy a place. Enjoy material possessions are there to be used and enjoyed, and not saved, protected, and things are not more important than people. And often you do see the opposite. People say, oh, don't touch that car, or be careful. It's like, no, it's been really important to me, especially in my parenting journey, that the person, the child, is so much more important than things, or necessarily, other people's feelings aren't necessarily more valid than theirs just because they're older or something. It's funny how children can be really belittled, like, oh, they're more important because you're just little. And no, we're all the seed of a human being, and we're all important. And I think my kids have really gone that for me. If nothing else, they know that they're very valued as they are, and they're no less important than anyone else. So I think that's quite a big thing, and especially growing up, in the sort of 70s and 80s, where often would be dragged, it's more parent-centric and would be dragged along to things. And, whereas nowadays, I think the child is considered a lot more than when I was growing up. And I think that's important to me, because it lowered my sense of worth, I think, that I didn't feel seen and valued quite as much as I could have been. Yeah.
What a deep healing that is, to value your children so much that they get the message, and the blessing that you have embodied for yourself gets passed on to them.
Yeah. Parenthood has been a deeply healing journey for me. It's really been deeply healing. And what a beautiful thing. I love that my children have similarities and that they're highly sensitive as well. So I can do it differently with the knowledge and the tools I have available to help them get a better result. And of course, I'm not perfect. Like I say, with my daughter this year, I didn't really know. We get caught up in those limiting beliefs, but children should go to school. And of course, most of the time we tried for that, and she did go a lot of the time, but then just letting it go. It's not the be all and end all, at the end of the day.
I am so grateful that I know you prior to this conversation. And I know that you are a meditator like I am. And so, are there any specific meditations that you find helpful for the high sensitivity that either works for you or people that you know that are highly sensitive?
I just think doing it with whatever works for you, just to do something every day, really. And sometimes we can overthink it. I quite enjoy, as I go to sleep, I like to have a more formal meditation. Like in the morning, I have a little bit of a yoga session, and then I'll do some meditating, then I'll journal. That's my little ritual, which I've really made a non-negotiable this year. And anytime I don't do it, I really feel it. And my children feel it too. They know when I haven't been meditating, because I'm just more of myself, who I was meant to be, and not in that irritation sort of mind place. So yeah, it's my duty. It feels like it's my duty to do that every day. And in this season of life, it's probably not quite as long as I want it to be, but I try and go in with an open time frame, so it'll just have its natural course. But also before sleep, I'm someone who historically has gone to sleep when I'm absolutely exhausted. Like I'll stay up until I'm just falling asleep and then I'm out, you know. I hate that, going to bed at a certain time, then sort of tossing and turning and trying to get to sleep. I'm trying to change that a little bit and go to bed earlier, put on a meditation. And I did your meditation the other night as I went to sleep. And it's the most beautiful thing. As I've said to you many times, you've got the most beautiful, soothing presence and voice. And yeah, to listen to one of your meditation episodes as you go to sleep is just the most healing, soothing balm. So yeah, to go to sleep with the meditation is really beautiful as well, I think. And we can all do that. We all go to bed. I suggest even just sitting for 5 minutes, for even just a few minutes, just do something every day where you're just connecting within is super important. And I think especially for the highly sensitive, because that place is so important, you know, tapping in. I think for everyone, but especially us, we need to connect to that place within us, because that's our source for everyone.
Yeah. I feel the truth of what you're saying, and whether that tapping in is for connecting to that source or even integrating what's happening during the day. And I'm saying that while I'm thinking about my son, because he needs that alone time. And there are special things that he likes to do for himself. And if he doesn't get it, he's much more moody and much more difficult. I mean, he's an easy person, but it gets worse if he's not getting his time. And I think for him, and perhaps for some of us, it's that integration of the details of life that need a place to land and sort through and even get organized inside of the being.
Yeah, because life's coming at you. There's a lot of stimuli, as we know, and we're taking it all in. So we just need that time out to recalibrate and get everything into order, and to do it regularly. I mean, as often as you can. And the thing is, it's not a chore. Once you get into a practice, it's a beautiful way to spend your time. What I love nothing better to do. You know, there's nothing I'd more love to do than that. So yeah, it's just getting it into the habit. And that's the discipline, is making it a habit. And then it's beautiful. It's a delight.
There is so much more I could talk about with you and continue to ask and reflect on. And we also will wind down slowly but surely. So, what more would you like to step into that we've already shared? And maybe there's more you want to share, or something new that we haven't mentioned that is on your mind or in your heart that you would like our listeners to know about?
Well, I guess it's about getting out there, and just this year has been a huge year of growth to me. And it's interesting, like I say, we're sort of winding up the year now, and I've just been reflecting back, and it's been a challenging year in a lot of ways, but it's like night and day when I look back to, you know, this time last year. We've done so much externally, but internally there's been such huge shifts as well. Yeah, we're literally in another country. We moved with 2 suitcases each, me and my kids, my husband. Yeah, it's quite amazing, but it felt so freeing. It's really amazing to do that. And even now, we're considering we might go back. My husband does miss his family and friends, so we might go back temporarily to New Zealand. We're not sure, but it's quite beautiful at the moment to not actually know, just to really be living in the moment. And if you let it, there can be quite a lot of anxiety. Literally in 5 weeks, we might be moving out of this house, getting on a plane and going back.
Wow.
So we really don't know. It depends on a few factors. My husband's applied for a few jobs, and it's kind of precarious, but it's also freeing, and it's a sense of surrender to just well, we'll just see what happens and I'll be okay with that. I have my preferences, of course, but yeah, just letting go and not fighting to have one way or another is quite freeing. So yeah, it's been a big year of growth and just navigating different challenges and changes. But that's how you strengthen, isn't it? I mean, that's how you strengthen and grow, is through going through those things. And I wouldn't change anything.
I get the sense of adventure as you're talking about all of your moves. I mean, wow, Lydia, what will
It's,
happen now?
I know. Well, or another thing is we would quite like to travel the world, and that's quite why I quite like just being free of all our stuff. We're in another country and we've got beds and furniture and all that sort of thing. But, it's about realizing that things, they don't hold us down. And most of the stuff's from IKEA. We can just get rid of it and go to another place and get more stuff and not being held down by that. I remember I used to work with someone. He was a single man. He was a bit older. He worked with me in the film industry and he had great money coming in. He was free. He didn't have any partner or kids or anything. And he wouldn't travel or do all these great things because he had so much stuff. His hobby would be going to flea markets and stuff. And he just would collect all these things. And he was in a rental home actually, but he just had so much stuff. So, oh no, I couldn't travel because I've got too much stuff. And it broke my heart and just made me feel awful. He wasn't a hoarder as such, but it was just so much stuff. It's junk. It's other people's junk. Get rid of it, shed it, and fly free. This was 25 years ago or something. And I really got the sense then. I thought, no way will I ever be like that. And when you have children, you do get more bound down with stuff and material items and lots of gifts and things for the children and all this sort of thing. But they're at an age where we could let go of a lot of stuff. And we do still have some stuff in my parents-in-law's storage container, but being here for a year, we realize there's very little we actually need now. Photo albums, really, that's probably the only thing I miss. There's a few things like that, little mementos like photo albums, but everything else, you get what you need wherever you go. It's very easy. And things these days, material things are very inexpensive. I find that freedom is so liberating. I understand now when people have said they just, like yogis, they'll just get rid of everything, they renounce everything and they just walk out there. It is quite freeing to not have a lot of stuff on your back.
You're reminding me, Lydia, of one last thing I wanted to ask you about. And it's about when the highly sensitive person feels lost and how purpose and potential might come into play with that feeling of being lost. I'd love to hear your thoughts and wisdom about this.
I've found that there's a lot of people I've come across who are highly sensitive people who feel lost and they don't know why, what the whole point of it is, why they feel things so deeply and, find it hard to be around other people. I see a lot of people resonating a lot more with their animals than humans. They find having pets a lot easier than a lot of people around them. There's a lot of loneliness and at times as well. You feel quite isolated and different. But I think it's knowing our purpose and who we really are. We are beings of love and light and spiritual beings having a human experience. To have that understanding is it all clicks into place and it all makes sense. Yeah, I think it's so important to get these messages out there and to reach the highly sensitive people so they can really see who they really are and see the amazing gifts which they have to share with others as well. But I think if you don't know that piece, or you're missing that piece, or you might be feeling that lack of self-worth and things from growing up feeling different and not being acknowledged and validated, then they feel other. It's hard in that place to know that we're actually these divine beings in a human body. Yeah. That's why I've been really focusing on the highly sensitive people and reaching out, and with the hope that people realize who they really are. That's the main purpose for me, and to help them know their incredible inherent worth, which every human being has. But highly sensitive really have a special gift, a unique special gift, which others don't have as well. And that's here for a big purpose in the world too.
In a nutshell, what would you say that gift is of the highly sensitive person?
To really, like your teacher, to see who people really are, to know what they need inherently, just to feel what someone really needs and to help others and be there for others in a way that often gets missed by people who are more externally focused. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's that feeling. And we all know when we meet people like that who feel us, they get us and they feel us on a deep level. That's one of the most valuable things we can have in life, to really feel like someone gets us. And yeah,
Absolutely.
highly sensitive people have that in spades. And as you do, I mean, you just make everyone feel relaxed and soothed and in that place because you're being fully who you are, and it affects people just by embodying ourselves and being fully who we are and accepting it and knowing the worth of it is what changes the world and helps others the most.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you for your kindness, Lydia, and shining your light so beautifully and seeing the highly sensitive people of the world and valuing them so much, knowing that they have this wonderful innate purpose. I love that you're teaching what you're teaching and helping people learn and grow about themselves. Thank you.
And thank you for all you do. I mean, you're just a beacon of love and light. And just by you being fully who you are and putting that out into the world, it makes other people, through osmosis almost, that we recognize who we really are and our gifts and have that self-awareness, which is what we need more than ever, I think.
Where can everyone find you?
I've got a website for my coaching practices and different coaching programs. I have group coaching programs from time to time, and that's lydia-gillman.com. You can find my podcast, Stepping into Purpose podcast, and I've just launched this new shop, which is really about spreading a love revolution. Like I said, this knowing who we really are and what we're here to do in the world is so important to me. I created this shop just with all these products, t-shirts and sweatshirts, and there's more products coming, but just sharing the messages of love. I think in a world that we have right now with the chaos and the conflict and things, just these passive messages of love and light just need to be out there. So we're almost like foot soldiers walking the streets just with these messages out there. So people can just
Mhm.
clock them, just glance them and just take them in.
Mhm.
It's just what I believe is the way to make the world a better place. So that's lovetoat.com. I'd love any feedback which anyone has, please. Yeah, it's a brand new venture, so I'm excited about it, but also wanting to receive any feedback because it's really about a community for me. It's about creating a community, and the products are one piece of it, but having this community and creating a movement is the biggest thing for me. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's a love revolution. I love this. I'm so excited for all you're doing, and Stepping into Purpose podcast is a wonderful show. I recommend everyone listen to it. I am thrilled that you're helping our world transform in this way with such grace and honesty and self-awareness and self-acceptance.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I feel the same with all that you're doing. So thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate it. And I so appreciate just spending the time with you.
Thank you so much for listening. It has been a great joy to have your presence here in this podcast. I welcome you to celebrate the joy and wisdom in your life exactly as it is. And I welcome you to feel loved, fully loved, exactly as you are. www.rainelizabeth.org